Meeting in order, please.
Mayor Zakowski.
Here.
Alderman Kittle.
Here.
Alderman Breeze. Alderman Weinmeier.
Here.
Alderman Gartner.
Here.
Alderman Montello.
Here.
And I have Alderman Volkert is absent.
Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Republic for which it stands, indivisible.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Okay.
We think alike.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any public comments?
Nobody signed in.
Okay. You hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second that. Sorry, Greg.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so move. Let's see here. Old business, citizen appointments to board and commissions, May 2024. To hear a motion to approve the citizen appointments.
I'm going to offer that motion, Your Honor.
I'll
Second.
I got Greg.
Okay. Want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Breeze. Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Motion passes. Board and commission appointments for the city council. To hear a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion, take the roll, please.
Alderman Breeze. Yes. Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes. Appointments pass. Mary Park entrance sign. Noah?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. If you recall at our last meeting, we discussed the Mary Park entrance sign. At that time, the council voted to proceed with replacing the east column, which had been damaged last summer, as well as with the metal signage that spans between the two. And there was interest expressed in finding out what it would cost to actually replace both of them, just out of concerns that the stone or brick or the mortar may not match exactly, and given that the cost came in significantly under what the claim was for. So included in your packet was the estimate from No Limit Brick and Stone LLC out of Roberts. And the estimated cost to actually rebuild both was $28,000. So still would be under the claim, which was about a little over $52,000. And so if the council wanted to move forward with replacing both of them, Public Works staff would take down the existing column that's still there, and then later this summer, he would replace both of them. And so the total project cost, if you proceeded with that direction, would be $31,335, factoring in the cost that you previously approved with Fusion Metals to redo the metal lettering. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
So a question now. The insurance payment was what 51,000 approximately?
Yeah,
52.
Just over 52.
52?
Yep.
So the excess 20 to 21,000, does that go to the park board for use in the parks then? This was a park project?
Not necessarily. It would really be up to if the council wanted to direct those towards something. So it isn't necessarily similar if we have a claim for hail damage or things like that. You know, if there's leftover, well, we'll actually talk about that later tonight about with the flock camera system. So in some cases, you know, we've kind of kept it in that department, or if there's another, some other use for it that the council would want to identify.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve doing the whole sign. I guess we'll say both columns, it's the whole sign in its entirety for that bid of $31,330. Is that a 5 or a 6?
5.
5.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion?
So what would happen to the excess funds? Just go to general fund?
For the time being, yeah. So if there was another, something we could talk about, at a future meeting, if there was something you want to do with those, but.
Other questions? If not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Motion passes. Next item, Knowles Avenue Streetscape Improvements.
I've got a few slides that'll be on the screen momentarily. This was also a follow-up discussion from our last meeting. And I'll go through this pretty quickly. Just as a recap, at our last meeting, we talked about some of the existing conditions of some of our downtown streetscape amenities, including trash receptacles, the flower planters and benches. We also talked about some of the missing light poles as well. And you can go to the next slide. So we talked about those. General feedback that was expressed was that the orange barrels should be replaced as soon as possible, as well as the trash receptacles. General feedback was that the lighting, there's a preference to addressing that all at one time, not, hey, we're going to replace 3 street lights every year and kind of do it piecemeal. There was support for involving the downtown business community. And then there was also a desire expressed that if we're going to potentially invest quite a bit of money into new lights and amenities, that it may be beneficial to us to actually engage with a landscape architect or a planner who has some experience in this, just to make sure that we're not just picking out things that are going to clash aesthetically or they're not going to last a long time. So that's just kind of a brief summary. We talked probably for an hour at our last meeting about that, but just kind of to refresh everyone's memory. You can go to the next slide. So what I kind of called phase 1 is just, what has been done since we last met. You've probably noticed the orange barrels were replaced. We have a small green pedestal, which is anchored to the sidewalks now. So aesthetically, again, kind of more of an interim solution for the time being, but not the bright, large barrel in front of businesses. The electric department is in the process of replacing some of the worst poles. So not necessarily the decorative ones downtown, but looking at all of Knowles Avenue. They had 12 in inventory, and so most of the worst ones are on North Knowles, and so you'll see some of those being replaced. We did have a meeting with what they're calling themselves as Renew Richmond, which is our downtown group that has kind of been spearheaded by Scott Soderberg. So they had their first meeting earlier this spring. Had kind of a smaller turnout, but they did send communications out to all the downtown businesses and property owners. And I wanted to hear kind of their thoughts about this and how they may want to be involved and, what level of engagement they thought downtown business owners would want to have with this. And then our Public Works Department has also ordered new trash receptacles. So you'll see the existing ones are still there. They're expected to arrive this Friday. So you'll see those being replaced here in the near future. As we discussed last time, the intention was get new trash receptacles. These may not be the final solution, but these could always be relocated somewhere in the future to one of our parks or bike trails. So kind of our next phase is what we'll talk about this evening. Again, there was interest expressed in actually having a outside professional help give us some guidance on this. And so I reached out to SCH, who's worked not just in New Richmond, but in other communities, really just trying to look for a very limited scope and to say, we're looking for your expertise. You've helped communities when they've redone streets and state highway projects and picking some of these amenities. You have current pricing that you've worked with other communities to receive. And wanted to look at evaluating amenities for longevity, affordability, making sure the design is cohesive, attractive, complements the historic downtown. They would be looking at the benches, the planters, our bike racks, and the decorative streetlights. So this wouldn't be work involving the intersection control cabinets or anything like that at this time. They would basically put 3 packages together to say, here's things that and what the cost would be, and so you'd be able to see what they look like and what the expected cost would be. And we would be able to share those with our downtown business owners to see if there's one that they particularly like, to get some feedback. So the estimated cost from SCH was $6,240 for that scope of work. If you want to go to the next one. And a couple other items we want to talk about tonight. One was just more for informational purposes. When we met with the downtown group, one of the concerns that they expressed was signage for public parking. Not necessarily that, hey, we don't have enough parking downtown, but do people know where it's located? And if I'm driving on Knowles Avenue and the parking sign is right before the intersection and I'm new to the community, I may not see the sign at all, or if I do see the sign, it may be too late. And especially if you're turning on, 3rd Street or even 1st Street, if you're new to the area, is there appropriate signage even off of Knowles Avenue directing you to where those public parking signs or parking lots are located? So this is not something that would be in the scope for SCH, but something that as staff we can say, here's where the current signs are located, here's where we think they should be, and the signage itself can be incorporated in our operating budget. So just wanted to highlight that because that was a concern expressed from some of the downtown business owners.
Noah, can I interrupt you for a second? You're talking about what I would call, off Main Street parking.
Yes,
Do we really have that in the city?
we do.
I mean, this lot's full most days. That lot down there on the East 3rd is pretty full. I mean, but that's what we're talking about, right? Is those lots.
And then over on
There's some on the west side too, Mike,
Yep.
all along Minnesota
where
Avenue,
the
plus another one
Creamery
behind the
building.
creamery.
But I'm not saying signs are a bad idea. I just think the reality is like, if you're in a community and you see that, you turn and you expect to see a place I'm gonna be able to park my car, and here there's just as good a chance as not that you won't be able to park in this parking lot because it's already full. That's all.
Yeah, and their concern wasn't, hey, we need more parking downtown,
Right.
really just, especially if someone's new to the community, do they know where they're gonna find it? And something, again, we thought kind of low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that as staff, we can look to address that. Doesn't cost us a lot to order additional signs if we need. And then the other item we wanted to discuss tonight was in regards to the flower planters. So again, this would be part of the scope if we were to engage with SCH, that they would bring some options forward on. But obviously it is almost the middle of May now, and so we will be having our flowers arriving soon for the season. And we did want to have some direction from the council if you wanted to utilize the existing flower planters yet for this summer, or did you want to replace, remove the ones that are currently on Knowles Avenue downtown and replace them with the smaller planters, which we talked about last time, that had been in the median. So those are in storage right now, just up at the public workshop. Basically what we're trying to avoid is we put flowers in the existing planters, and then a month or two from now, we have to take them out and put them in other planters, and just trying to avoid duplication of efforts. So if you want to go to the next slide. For a future work session, we would talk about the intersection upgrades and in looking at incorporating that into our 5-year capital plan. And we would also talk about kind of a bigger picture downtown revitalization plan. While these downtown streetscape amenities are important, they're just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to how do you fill vacant storefronts, how do you have a successful downtown where people want to spend time and shop and dine or work, and so how does this kind of fit in that bigger context and bigger picture, and how do we look at things like our downtown historic guidelines, which are being prepared? How do we look at our corridor study from Knowles Avenue, which was done a few years ago, and kind of take a bigger picture view of what could the city do, what could our local businesses community take initiative on, what are things that the Chamber or Ford New Richmond, kind of look bigger picture beyond just flowers and benches, and while those again are important, that's just one piece of the puzzle. So we don't cover that tonight, but really looking in terms of action steps tonight, if you wanted to proceed with SCH with their proposal for that more technical assistance, which you had expressed interest in last time, and then really just looking at direction for the planters. And basically, do you want to use the existing ones yet for this year, or do you want us to replace them here in the next couple of weeks and use those smaller planters, which we have up in storage?
Miss-
Where's the funding for this coming from then?
So for the planters themselves, there's no, I mean, our staff would remove those. They would do it during, probably either late at night or early in the morning when we don't have traffic downtown, just because they're quite large. And again, we have enough planters up at the shop. There were probably more than you realize in the median. So we do have enough to address the downtown, really about having to buy new ones. Again, those may not be the final design if there's a more decorative one or something that we would proceed with. And then in regards to that $6,000 number, we would look at, because this kind of touches a few different areas between public works, community development, we would expect to find that just within our operating budget.
Mr. Mayor, for the purposes of defining the conversation, I'm going to offer a motion that we move ahead with the proposal from SEH, and we use the planters that were on the north side. We get those downtown and get the old planters out of there.
I'll second that.
Yeah, further discussion?
Yeah,
I just have a couple comments on things.
go ahead first.
Those green things they put on there really look nice downtown. I saw them the next day. In fact, I called you on. They really look nice how they came out. Will we still have the hanging baskets downtown?
Yes. Yep.
And they always look really nice.
Yeah, when
And
we
f-
look at possible designs for new lighting, that's
Yeah.
one thing we would look at of, do you still want hanging baskets? Do you still want the banners? A lot of different accessories you can have in terms of the poles themselves. But for this year, we would still plan to put the hanging baskets on the existing poles.
I can say because I make my walking rounds almost every day. Minnesota Avenue has a lot of parking on it all the time. There's always a lot of parking down that whole way there versus these lots are always full. But there's always, almost those spots
So
are
maybe,
always
maybe the
yeah.
sign should direct everybody to the west side of.
Well, whatever. But it's just like
Where there actually
any
is
town you
parking.
go to that has parking signs, you know, that's the first place people go to. But if you have them going both ways, there is parking down along there, so, yeah.
My question, I guess I'd like to hear some feedback from the council about the bike things on Main Street. First of all, you can't ride bicycles on sidewalks, correct? I think I'd be a little nervous about riding a bike on Knowles Avenue. I wonder how many bike racks would really be necessary. I'm a biker, but I don't think I would dare to drive my bicycle down Knowles Avenue. That's a good place for having bike racks.
I think it's a great question, and I think that it's something that I'd like to hear from Renew Richmond, because I remember when they were put in there, and it was something to do with the tech school, and I thought at the time, I was really afraid they wouldn't get used, because it's not an inviting place to ride your bike, and even who's riding to within a block of downtown, I think, right, Chief? And then getting off and walking your bike, maybe somebody would do that, but I happen to agree with you, but I'd love to put that to Renew Richmond and ask them, because, I'm not sure they're getting used, and it just is kind of, it clutters up the sidewalk if they're not getting used.
Riding a bike in town is down Main Street is terrible. Everywhere else is fine, but Main Street is ridiculous.
I just think to make this more downtown, I know one of the things they're really looking for, walkable downtown to Richmond, and I just think those bike racks tend to clutter up our sidewalks even more. Just, I think it's a good idea, Mike. I'd love to send that back to Renew in Richmond.
And SCH has suggested including them just with the thought that, you know, if it's something we wanted to, if we didn't want them anymore, certainly there's still,
Yeah.
you know, put them at a park or one of the bike trails or something. But you didn't want to, you know, look at some higher design and looking at, you know, the integrity of the historic downtown and then just kind of ignore blue bike racks, you know, that say New Richmond on it, and then they kind of stand out more like, and maybe not to the best, so.
Yeah, so that's just something we can talk to SEH about when they get the plan back, just, you know, take those off. A couple of things. What are the goals of Renew Richmond? What are some of their goals? What are some of their aspirations? Do they plan on helping out with this? Do they plan on, you know, what are they thinking?
Well, this, if I mind,
yeah.
this was a genesis through the Forward in Richmond. We were talking about downtown businesses and how we can get more downtown businesses and be more active downtown, and it was suggested involve the downtown businesses. And so I think Scott Soderberg was initially picked out as a person who could spearhead that, and he in fact had at least one meeting, I
Yep,
know.
they've just had one meeting, and the next meeting would be in June or July. So I think also to be determined in terms of what that looks like long-term. You know, I think,
Because that was my question.
Really
What
from-
what are they planning on?
yeah, really at this point.
They
I
don't
think
know
it
yet?
was just to start conversation and how do you kind of get like-minded people together to look at creating positive change for the downtown.
Knowing we're
So-
already addressing some of these issues, so that's good that we're on the same page as far as that goes. Two, we had some pictures of some safety issues that I thought was something we had to address almost immediately. Where are we at with that? Is that just the new poles? Is that,
So we talked about poles in the intersection control cabinets.
those are really bad, some of them.
So, right, so those, when we talked about just the age and a lot of those are 30-plus years old and are having more and more issues. Given the price tag of those, and again, that's not something that was included in this year's capital improvement plan, something that we would look at, again, you're looking at over $100,000 per intersection, just your engineering design, getting approvals from the state to do that is going to take some time, but certainly not something that we just want to put off. So when we look at 2025 capital projects, as we've been doing each month at our work sessions, something to look at, okay, do we look at, and if that's a priority of the council, do we say, okay, each year we should be looking at replacing one of those? It's expensive, but like you said, it's a safety concern.
What's
for
SCH's
pedestrians.
timeline?
What's that? I'm
What's SCH's timeline? How long do they think this will take?
Oh, with these items?
Yeah.
The intention is to move quickly to get them addressed this summer.
To get SCH on board to give us a plan?
In regards to these amenities,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the plan that we made out, was it 5, 6 years ago? Was that more of a state issue? Was it more of a,
The corridor study?
yeah.
That was done?
that was more traffic than it was?
Yep, that was
Okay.
looking at basically
Aesthetics?
from North Knowles by Quick Trip, all
Yep.
the way down to looking at South Richmond Way, looking at traffic counts, traffic patterns, long-term, if the state were to redo Knowles Avenue, what would we want that to look like?
So we have that on board. We're kind of making sure that we keep that in front of us also when we're talking about this.
Yep.
We're not really talking about traffic changes like that study was. It's more about aesthetics and all that kind of stuff, and
Right,
safety.
The scope is really looking at more of some of your streetscape amenities. Now, however, when we look at potentially replacing the traffic lights and the control cabinets, you don't want to put those in and then years down the road, the DOT comes and says, well, we want to take those out, and it doesn't match with that. So they would look at that corridor study as part of that to say, if we have a left turn lane at 4th and Knowles, we want to make sure that, and if we were going to replace the lights there, that, we're making the best decision to have that flexibility in the future if we were going to do that.
So have we implemented any of that, that plan at all? That we paid for that?
With the corridor study,
Yeah. Have we
No.
We haven't done anything really.
that
Nothing.
looks at the feasibility of a road diet, so taking Knowles Avenue from 4 lanes down to 3, the construction of roundabouts up by the Speedway at North 4th and Knowles, a roundabout by 11th Street in Knowles. So unless the council wanted to allocate funds and look to do something like that, we would really be waiting until the DOT had plans to redo Knowles Avenue, and we would say, this is what we want it to look like.
So if the DOT does something, do they pay for the whole thing, or is it 50/50, 80/20?
They would be responsible for the costs
Oh, they would?
of the work, yep.
Okay.
But again, that could be 20 years from now, we don't know, so.
Yeah, because I know another thing is, we tried a bid district here. I don't think you were here. And the people, downtown businesses, I think maybe 15 people showed up for it. But once they found out that they had to put money in, it died. They thought the city was going to pay for everything. But, in a bid district, it worked between the city and the merchants downtown. They put money in too for advertising and other things like that. And as soon as they found out they had to put money in, they walked away. Heads up.
So this study was in 2019?
The corridor study? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of us that weren't on the council at the time. So is there a place I can find that? Or can Michelle send that to me?
Happy to email it to the whole group. Yeah, we
On
had
the
it on the
shelf.
city website for some time when it was first done.
You want to, any other questions? Michelle, you want to read the motion back? I think that was about 10 minutes, so 15 minutes ago.
Um, I have to work with SEH to bring a proposal forward to council for a cohesive plan for the downtown and to remove the current planters and replace them with the cement planters that we currently have in storage.
So any other questions? If not, do you want to take the roll, please?
Two, Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is donations and grants awarded. We had several here for the library. Friends of the Library donated $3,600. Ken Krazenga donated $269 to purchase e-audiobooks. And the Anne Marie Foundation awarded a grant of $900 for early literacy programming. For the fire department, they received a $100 donation from Dave and Karen Stevens in appreciation for performing a controlled burn. Public Works, the city was, this is a big one, the city was awarded a $650,000 grant to be used towards reconstruction of Bilmar Avenue. So that is huge, getting that grant. I thank everybody that worked on and applying for that. I know we've done that almost every year we apply, and finally we have a big donation. What is the total cost that estimated?
So that was half of the estimated cost
It is.
for Bilmar itself. Yep.
Great work. I mean, it saves the taxpayers $650,000. Sort of nice. And then electric operations, the GIS intern we were awarded a $4,000 grant for the student internship plan. This is a 250-hour internship this summer. And I don't know if we have to have a motion on this. I guess we have to have a motion, a verbal motion to accept the donations.
Or recognize them.
Yeah, really just to I mean, the, like for the grants, again, we don't need to formally accept, I mean, we've already authorized staff to apply and do that work, but really just trying to bring more formal attention to these. So want to make a formal motion to accept and just recognize them.
I think that'd be good, really, saying thank you. Somebody want to make that motion?
Yeah, I would make the motion to accept these grants and thank staff and everyone else involved in getting these. It's huge.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next item, resolution creating tax increment district number 12, approving its project plan and establishing its boundaries.
Mr. Mayor, if we would mind, we're waiting on Sean Lenz from Ellers. He's
Wanna move
coming
that?
to also, if we could just move on, and then when Sean comes, we can
We'll
move
come back to that
this
one then.
Thank you.
Can we have the record show that he was absent? That he
I know
arrived
he has a very
late?
busy day
Can we
going
can
to
show he arrived late?
Multiple meetings, so thank you.
Okay, okay.
Okay, then we'll move on, come back to that. The next item is certified survey map application, PID 261-1145-95-200.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our first application we'll be reviewing this evening is a certified survey map for the new library site. This was submitted by ISG on behalf of the City of New Richmond. The applicant seeks to divide the 3.914 acre parcel to create 2 new lots. The parcel is located north of East 5th Street, between South Arch Avenue and South Green Avenue. The proposed Lot 1 is 0.69 acres, proposed Lot 2 is 1.63 acres, and proposed Lot 3 is 1.6 acres. This application is subject to review by the DRC, Plan Commission, and City Council. The future land use map guides the site for institutional use. Institutional uses include areas for schools, city facilities and services, a library, healthcare facilities, community centers, historic and cultural centers, and post offices. Future development will need to be consistent with the future land use map. The parcel has a zoning designation of Z6 Central Business District. The purpose of Z6 is to provide opportunities for multi-story, mixed, and single-use commercial buildings, and townhomes, multifamily residential, lodging, and civic buildings. So future development will need to be consistent with the zoning designation. The parcel is also located within a wellhead protection district. For surrounding uses, to the north is the New Richmond area ambulance and single-family homes. To the east is the center and single-family homes. The south is single-family homes, and then to the west is primarily commercial uses, including a dance studio, auto shop, and physical therapy office. Future development will need to be compatible with surrounding uses. For access, the proposed lots are accessible via South Green Avenue, South Arch Avenue, and East 5th Street. An existing access easement is located on the south side of proposed Lot 1. And South Green Avenue and South Arch Avenue have existing sidewalks for pedestrian and bicyclist access. We have one condition under access. The current parcel boundary extends south down into the middle of East 5th Street. So we have one condition that additional right-of-way on Lot 3 shall be dedicated, so East 5th Street is within the public right-of-way. Upon future development, all of the parcels will be served by New Richmond Utilities. The utility and drainage easements shown on the CSM are correct. We have one condition under easements that the applicant shall remove the east and west easements on proposed Lot 2. And that is because the proposed location of the mixed-use building, which would include the library, extend or would be built over those easements. And so rather than building over them and having to vacate them at a later time, we would prefer that they just don't put them there to start with. And in that zoning district, they are allowed to build up to the lot line, so they would be allowed to build over them. The DRC and Plan Commission recommend approval of the certified survey map with 2 conditions, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Are we gonna widen Fifth, that narrow? Put an access off there. Are we gonna change that in any way at all?
Yeah, so as part of the site plan for the project, we are looking at adding some additional on-street parking. And when it comes to West 5th Street, we've had some conversations about making that a one-way, actually, instead of just to help with circulation there. It is a narrow street, and then
East Fifth.
sorry, yep. And then to Amber's point, basically right now the property line is actually in the middle of that road. So you can kind of see that shaded on the gray area. So you can see the property line is the black line at the bottom. The gray section is the existing road that's there. So, so something we just want to clean up.
So the one-way would be proposed to go which one way?
Again, just under initial conversation at this point, but it would potentially be going westbound towards Arch.
So for the residents in that area that want to go from downtown to their house on East 5th Street, they'd have to go up to East 6th Street to get to their house.
Yeah, they would either go to 3rd or to 6th.
6th.
Yep. Again, that's something that still has to, very initial stages of that. So
I'm
not
not
part of
thrilled about
the CSM, but something we're looking at.
We have
You
a
think it should be
motion?
widened, Greg?
Well, I think it's really narrow. I mean, I walk that road all the time. It's the narrowest road in the whole city of New
Pretty
Richmond.
narrow.
Can't have parking on there at all, really.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the CSMs that are put before us.
Second, with the
With
two conditions.
Yes, thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And now any further discussion? Any more questions? Not, take the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is condominium plat application, City of New Richmond, mixed-use building.
This application was also submitted by ISG on behalf of the City of New Richmond. for a condominium plat application for a proposed mixed-use building. This mixed-use building is the proposed location of the future library, and it would be located on Lot 2 of the CSM we just looked at in our last application. The proposed building consists of 4 floors and an underground parking garage. The parcel is located north of East 5th Street between South Arch Avenue and South Green Avenue. The application is also subject to review by the DRC, Plan Commission, and City Council. A public hearing was held on May 7th at the Plan Commission meeting. The site, again, is the same as what we just looked at, so the future land use is institutional. The zoning district is Z6, and it is also located in a wellhead protection district, so development should be compatible with those items. The minimum setbacks on all sides of the lot in Z6 are 0 feet, which mean that the applicant can build up to the lot lines. The maximum setbacks on the front and secondary fronts are 5 feet. So the proposed setbacks meet the requirements with one exception, that the setback from South Green Avenue, which is on the east side of the lot, exceeds the maximum setback requirement by 2.7 feet. However, this is in a residential neighborhood, and so we feel that the increased setback is consistent with neighboring properties which are set back further from the lot lines. The proposed building is accessible via South Arch Avenue and South Green Avenue. The underground parking garage is accessible on the north side of the building via an access easement off of South Green Avenue. The applicant has also proposed a concrete sidewalk on the north and south side of the building, which would connect to the existing sidewalks on South Arch and South Green. No parkland is proposed to be dedicated as a part of the project, so the developer would need to pay park impact fees at the time of building permit applications. The future development will be served by New Richmond Utilities, and utilities will be reviewed as a part of a separate site plan application. We have one condition under utilities, that additional common elements for the purpose of utilities, which are identified prior or during construction, shall be reflected on the condo plat prior to completion and occupancy. So that means that a lot of the items within the building, such as pipes, are considered common elements. And so as they continue to hash out the building plans, if they identify additional common elements, they need to add them on before we give them occupancy. For easements, they have drainage and utility easements, which are consistent with our requirements. And then we have the same condition under the easements about removing the east and west easements as our last application, because we don't want them to build over those easements again. The DRC and Plan Commission recommend approval of the condominium plat application with 2 conditions, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I would make a motion to approve with the 2 conditions.
I'll second that motion. And I do have a question for you. I'm just confused by the verbiage. I understand minimum setbacks, there are none. Maximum setbacks kind of throws me. Is that saying that it has to be? No, it has to, a building has to happen. I mean, the way this is written, it has to be within 5 feet of the sidewalk?
Yes, so the Z6 district is primarily what our downtown is. And so we have the maximum 5 feet because we want our buildings to be set close to the main road. But in this case, when this site is set back off of our main street, that 5 feet is pretty narrow, but that's what the district requires.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so the Parkland Trust fees will be for the 56 units?
Correct.
So again, we're not considering 56 units as part of this application. This is just the land division.
But when they do pay, they're not going to dedicate any land. they're going to pay for the however many units there are.
That would be addressed as part of the site plan and then the development agreement as
Okay.
well. Yeah, so while we know in this room that yes, this is regarding the library building project, you're treating this just as this is the application for the plat. And so in theory, you don't really know what's getting built here. That's a separate application, so.
What is going to be built there?
We don't know yet.
Oh, I forgot about that. Excuse me.
So that would still have to go back to Plan Commission, and that's when they're gonna talk about the lighting and landscaping and parking and how tall the building's gonna be and all those.
Any other questions? Not, take the roll, Michelle.
Alderman Kittle? Alderman Vries?
Yes?
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes?
Alderman Gartner?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes, Mayor, before you move on, I'm just curious, this actually is only what we would think of as the library and apartments and the lot that's to the south of that.
Just the piece in the middle,
Just the library building.
just the mixed-use site. So not the northeast corner,
Oh.
not where the, like the surface parking lot.
It's the second, this is like the second, I think that was how that was identified, 1, 2,
Yep, this would just be
3.
that middle section, number 2. Yep.
Okay, sorry, I was curious because it says, it's talking about the sidewalks. Well, yeah, it says something about green and the proposed building is accessible via South Sarch Avenue, which I get that, and South Green, and I don't see where the South Green access is there.
Off of the east and the west. So not by vehicle, we're more so just talking
Oh, does it?
access in
Okay,
general,
got it.
yeah.
A person can get there from here if they're on South
It's
Green.
frontage along the road,
I got it.
basically.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Oh, sorry, stole your thunder.
Sean, you're going to be on now. Let's go back to resolution creating tax incremental district number 12, approving its project plan and establishing the boundaries.
Mr. Mayor, too, we would be fine if it's okay with you to just continue to move through the annexation and the urban attachments, and then we could go back.
We can
To the-
certainly
to-
do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, petition for annexation, PID 026-100270-000.
Sheryl Naser petitioned for her 2.014 acre parcel to annex from the town of Richmond into the city of New Richmond. This parcel is located on the south side of County Road GG, north of Meadow Crossing, with an address of 1415 County Road G. The parcel is contiguous to the city and currently occupied by a single-family home. This application is subject to review by the DRC, Plan Commission, and City Council. A public hearing was held at the Plan Commission meeting on May 7th. Notice was provided to the town of Richmond and the Wisconsin Department of Administration. The Wisconsin DOA reviewed the application and did not have any objections. As a part of the application, the city shall assign a zoning designation based on the future land use map and surrounding uses. As shown on the screen, the city recommends a zoning designation of Z2 suburban district, which is primarily low density residential, which is shown in yellow on the screen. The existing home is currently served by New Richmond Electric. A water service line is stubbed to the right-of-way south of County G, which can serve the property. And city sewer is approximately 150 feet to the south along Violet Street in Meadow Crossing. So we have one condition, that the property owner shall be required to connect to city water and sewer within a 1-year time period. All costs and expenses to connect would be the responsibility of the property owner. And then once the property has connected, the private well and septic system shall be properly abandoned. The DRC and Plan Commission recommend approval of Ordinance 606 for the annexation with a zoning designation of Z2 suburban district with one condition. And the DRC and Plan Commission also recommend waiving all of the annexation and application and review fees. I'm happy to answer questions.
Your motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve the annexation of this property.
I'll second that.
Further discussion now?
So they're currently on a private well
Correct. Private well and septic.
with our electrical service.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Motion passes. Urban Reserve Area Attachment PID 038-1106-60-300.
Thomas and Cynthia Hill petition for their 29.67 acre parcel to be attached to the city of New Richmond from the town of Star Prairie. The parcel is west of County Road CC and Freedom Park. The parcel is located in the urban reserve area and qualifies for attachment under 3.2 of the boundary agreement. Property owner requests for attachment. The application is subject to review of the DRC, Plan Commission, and City Council, and a public hearing was held at the Plan Commission meeting on May 7th. Notice was provided to the town, who did not have any objections. As a part of the attachment process, the city shall assign a zoning designation. Based on the future land use map, the DRC recommends a zoning designation of Z3 Multi-Use Corridor District. For utilities, the closest water and sewer mains are located approximately 0.4 miles to the south in Freedom Park at the future VFW site. At this time, there are no plans to extend utilities further to the north on Wall Street. If desired for future development, the applicant shall have the opportunity to go before the Utility Commission to receive permission for private well and septic systems. And then prior to future development, the applicant shall work with the electric superintendent to coordinate electric services. The DRC and Plan Commission recommend approval of Ordinance 607 for the attachment with a zoning designation of Z3 Multi-Use Corridor District. The DRC also recommends waiving all of the attachment application and review fees.
Hear a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
So I have some questions. First of all, I could have asked this for the last one. The waiving of all fees, what's the principle behind that?
I can comment on that. So historically, that's just been something we've done to try to incentivize. Obviously, there's can always be a point of contention of someone wanting to annex or attach to the city. And that's something I'd say for the last probably 8 or 9 years at least. That's been our practice for all of them. But something that the council wanted to revisit or reconsider. But typically, it's just been our practice.
What are we waiving?
So
I mean, the dollar amount.
Roughly.
Yeah.
the dollar amount on the attachments is very low, under $100 low. On an annexation with the state review, those are typically around $900.
They vary for annexations on the size, the acreage of the parcel that they're reviewing. So higher or greater acreage means a higher evaluation price.
Would the higher be 900 or would the lower be 900?
No, 900 is kind of that average, so they could go up. I think we've had some recently at like 1,300 would be the high.
And just for the point of asking the question, if this was going to be a home development, this really gets into philosophy, would we be waiving fees in that case?
Annexation part.
Yeah.
Or attachment.
So I think part of this too is also understanding that, with our agreement, they're looking to, because this property changed hands, the property has to come from the township into the city. So to then, I think more of the principle of, okay, now you're gonna charge them for something that they have no choice in doing. And then trying to also look at, okay, if you're not gonna charge someone in the town of Star Prairie who's attaching to the city, but now you're going to charge someone in the town of Richmond who doesn't have to come in and is voluntarily choosing to do that and trying to just be more consistent.
Yeah, I'm not really specifically asking about this property. I'm just curious from a philosophy standpoint, are there instances that we don't waive fees when it comes to annexation?
Recently, we've been waiving all of them.
We really are waiving, okay.
Now,
What's-
if this property here, again, it's a bigger tract of land, if that is attached to the city from the township, now let's say they want to develop that for residential, this would be subject to the city zoning and approval process, so the plat or the CSM would go to the planning commission, the council. Things like impact fees or the question of whether they would have to extend city water or sewer, that really just depends on what's being proposed.
And I actually have a question about that, but what street is that? That is the southern border? Does anybody know? Is it 195th? So there's some property there that came into the city within the last, I think,
of years.
about
Yep.
year and a half ago?
Yep.
And then last question, I'm curious about, the applicant shall have the opportunity to go before the utility commission to receive permission for private well and septic systems. And while I appreciate the comment, at this time, there are no immediate plans to extend utilities further north on Wall Street. I am curious if there should be language on there that hooking up, in the utility sense, I'll use that expression, is required when it's available. And I'm not even sure what the definition of that is, but when it's on your doorstep, you got to do it. Is that something that's important to, memorialize here?
That's already in our ordinance itself. So I mean, we can certainly put it in there just so that, again, it's very clear what the intention is. But again, once the property would be attached to the city, that's gonna be a requirement, so.
So would you go back to other properties in the city of New Richmond or the township, and being there's utilities either right next to their place or
Going through it,
Hook
going
up.
through it in some cases.
going through it in some cases?
Yeah.
You'd have to be fair that way.
Well, I
There's
just,
a lot of them.
yeah, and I really, my point is, that's a good point. My point is I think partly that's been a challenge for us is where we've had properties, this type of thing happen, and this is great. I'm not really, I hate to talk about this, I'm just using this as an example. At some point, you would expect to see that the utilities are gonna grow beyond where they are there. And I think that it's easy for folks to have kind of the mindset that, well, it's gonna be 100 years from now, and it might be 5 years. That's all. I just think it's good for people to understand that the property's coming in, that's awesome. But we really have a hope to expand our water and sewer. And it's gonna require people to hook up, that's all. And so I get it, these folks will have to apply for private well and septic if they wanna do that out there. I just wanna we all know that we have this mission, and that particular part of town, it seems to be what I consider to be, I shouldn't say greatest amount of pressure, but there's a great amount of pressure to grow those utilities.
Well, I think when they develop that, which probably would be in the near future, then we can say you do have to bring city utilities out there. That'd be the condition if they want to develop that. I mean, we could do that.
It really depends on what type of future development occurs.
Exactly, yeah.
You may get a 40-acre tract of land, someone's looking to subdivide an existing farmhouse and a farm field, and they have no intentions of developing it, but they want to separate it into 2 lots. Both of those tracts of land have to be attached to the city because they're subdividing it, and if it's outside of the family. But they might say, we have no plans to do anything, and we have a well and septic, and we're 2 miles away from city water and sewer. But
Yeah,
you
but-
might have someone else that the next person buys it, and they say, I want to put 100 houses there, and we may say, okay, that we don't want 100 private, well and septic
Exactly,
systems out
yeah.
there.
So that'd be our option then.
It would be
Andy,
beneficial.
that is already in zoning or our ordinance we have. That's already covered, is that what you're saying?
Yep, in our ordinance, in the boundary agreement as well.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Any further discussion? Take the roll, Michelle, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, I think,
One more.
no one here yet?
8-7.
Oh,
You're
Urban
almost done with
Reserve,
me.
excuse
This
me.
is like aerobics class. One more.
Oh. Urban Reserve Area Attachment, PID 038-1106-6400.
Thomas and Cynthia Hill also petitioned for their 5-acre parcel to be attached to the city of New Richmond from the town of Star Prairie. This parcel is west of County Road C in Freedom Park. This parcel is directly northeast of the previous 29.67 acre parcel that we just reviewed in our previous attachment application. This parcel is located again in our urban reserve area and qualifies for attachment under section 3.2 property owner request for attachment. Notice was provided to the town, who again did not have any objections. As a part of the attachment process, the city shall designate a zoning district designation. And based on the future land use map, the DRC also recommends a zoning designation of Z3 multi-use corridor district. For utilities, since we are a little bit further north now, utilities are approximately 0.6 miles to the south in Freedom Park at the future VFW. The applicant again will have the opportunity to go before the Utility Commission and receive permission for private well and septic if desired for future development. And then again, they would need to work with the electric superintendent on electric connection if desired for future development. The DRC and Plan Commission recommend approval of Ordinance 608 for the attachment with a zoning designation of Z3 multi-use corridor district and waiving all of the attachment application and review fees.
Hear a motion to approve.
I would make a motion to approve the attachment.
Second it.
Any further discussion on this attachment?
5 acres?
5 acres, yes.
Not the same concern with the utilities as the other one, but
Well, this one's actually even, is it farther, it's farther away.
Further north, yep.
a little bit.
Tenth of a mile.
But I do think, just again, from a kind of planning standpoint, understanding that we'd like to see those utilities grow
Yeah.
that direction.
Beneficial to a lot of neighbors.
And when we meet with applicants too before they apply, we have also been emphasizing that you don't automatically get permission. You have to go before the Utility Commission. It's not just automatically approved. So they're aware of that too when they apply.
Further discussion? Take the roll, Michelle.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes?
Alderman Vreese,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, okay, a resolution creating tax incremental district number 12, approving its project plan and establishing its boundaries. Sean, you're on, I think.
Great. Thank you, Rand. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So today we're going to discuss tax increment District Number 12. Since I've been at the meeting here this evening, you've already touched on this project in another agenda item, as just as I was arriving. And what we're going to focus on for my portion this evening is the use of tax increment financing to move this project forward, it being the combination of the library and the apartment redevelopment on this site. So why is tax increment being considered? It's a way to provide the necessary financing of incentives and infrastructure which are vital to make the project occur. Oh, it already does. Okay, perfect. For those of you I know who've been on the council for some time, you've seen a slide like this before. I'll just go through it real briefly. When the community creates a tax increment district, the purpose is to create a financing tool to assist and promote development or redevelopment in a specific area of the city. Now, normally, that area will have a current taxable value to it. And the point I always make at this point in the presentation is when you use tax increment as a tool, you're not taking existing tax revenue from the city's general fund and or from the other taxing jurisdictions and dedicating that to the project. But what you are doing is from the point you create the district until the end of its life is any new value up and above the base value, you're going to get 100% of the tax revenue on that revenue. So the city share, the counties, the school district, and the tech college, it's shown in the purple on the chart above. Now, in this instance, we have a somewhat of a unique situation in that you own the property currently, so it currently has no taxable value. So the base value or the blue portion is actually zero. And what we hope to do, though, is through the construction of the apartments and the townhomes on the site, is create the purple value with the idea of capturing tax revenue from that new purple value to pay for incentive and infrastructure costs that are necessary to move that project forward. Ultimately, after those costs have been repaid, infrastructure and incentive, the green section is representative of that value shifting back and for the long term then becoming part of the taxable value of the city, general operations of the city, as well as the general operations of all the other taxing jurisdictions. Yep, perfect. Christy, I'll give you a heads up next. Sorry about that. District number 12, as proposed, is now shown up on the screen. Again, I'm sure the council is all familiar with, very familiar with this site. And the purpose is the long-term development of that site into an apartment, townhome, and library facility. The finding that we're making, and you've done this action before, as has your Community Development Authority, is that not less than 50% of the property is eligible to be blighted under the tax increment financing rules, and that as such, this district will be considered a blight elimination district. And again, the goal is to redevelop this site and take it from its current status to a much more positive use for the city in the long run. So as we've discussed, what are the expenses that are going to be necessary to make this development move forward? We've put those expenses into the project plan, and they primarily fall into two categories. One is a development incentive for the business that's creating the apartment on the site. And that'll be in the form of a cash grant development incentive that we see them using primarily to deal with the underground parking costs and challenges for the site. And then secondarily, and these expenses will occur either within the boundaries of the tax increment district or within a half mile of the district, which is represented by the dashed yellow line on the map you see up on the screen, are what you would look more as transportation improvements, primarily in the sidewalk, or safety improvements for pedestrians that will be coming to this site or moving around this site within a half mile of the site. So those were the primary expenses that we were looking at in order to move this project forward and have the development be able to occur. Now, as I'd mentioned, what's key to funding those infrastructure improvements as well as the incentives is creating a new taxable entity, tax-paying property on the property that currently has no taxable value. And based on preliminary discussions with 360, as well as with the city's assessor, we're estimating with the completion of the apartments and with the completion of the townhomes, a new taxable value for the site of somewhere around 11 million. And through the life of the tax increment district, projecting that that'll generate somewhere north of 5.2 million in tax increment revenue that again can be put to use to pay for the incentive as well as the infrastructure projects that we talked about on the previous slide. Now this one gets a little trickier to see, so I'll hit the high points on this. What we're looking at on the left side of this particular page is that same revenue that I just alluded to on the previous slide. So that's that new tax revenue stream from the proposed apartment and townhome project. And then moving into the green or middle section, you have intended payment of the expenditures falling into the incentive category and the infrastructure category. And what we're looking at, just to identify the two expenditures independently, is on the incentive side, through the ongoing negotiations on the development agreement for this project, we're looking at approaching this in what we call a pay-as-you-go approach. And what that will mean is the development group will be responsible to pay all of their costs, including the underground parking that we're hoping to help incentivize up front. So that'll be an outlay of dollars that they'll have. What we, the city, will do is we will pledge to them, if they complete the construction and create the tax increment revenue, a percentage of that will go each year to reimburse them for those costs. And
For how
personally,
long?
we really like those sort of tax increment deals and projects being structured that way, because that's less out of your pocket up front and less risk of you issuing debt that you would have to pay for regardless of how successful the project is or isn't.
So Sean, how long would that go? In perpetuity?
Yeah, so Craig, the chart you see up here, I know, again, the numbers are hard to see.
Yeah.
The maximum life of this tax increment district would be 27 years.
Yeah.
So the hope is that those expenses on the pay-as-you-go will be paid back earlier than that.
Yep.
But under no situations would it go longer in the
Okay.
development agreement than the life of the
Okay,
tax
that's all I
increment
want.
district.
So this is like worst-case scenario, you could say, is it's 27 years. But as the taxable amount goes up, that could make this be done in 20 years?
It can. So the chart, Mayor, that we're looking at right now, we are projecting based on the development incentive costs that I was just alluding to on the pay-as-you-go, as well as the infrastructure, the sidewalk, and the other pedestrian improvements, that we're projecting the district could be paid back around 2047. It's about 5 or 6 years prior to that maximum 27-year term.
Key is that we're not putting any money out. It's coming back from the taxes in.
Yes, now for the incentives, Mayor, on the infrastructure costs and the pedestrian improvements, those are being handled, I believe what we've talked about, Rayanne, is advancing dollars from other funds of the city to pay for those costs up front. And then over time, on the percentage of the tax increment revenue from the development agreement that comes immediately back to the city, you would get those dollars to reimburse yourself. And then you'll get 100% of the dollars after the incentive, the 1.5 million incentive plus interest on that is 100% paid back to the development group. So they kind of fall into the two different categories. The majority of the costs are in that incentive category. The infrastructure is a lower cost amount in total.
Isn't it 2 million in incentives? 1.5 and the 500?
In terms of the infrastructure costs, I think are around 500,000, and the incentives are 1.5 million plus, it would be plus interest on the incentive as well.
So it's not 2 million, it's, well, it's about that.
It's 2 million in hard costs, but there'll also be on the $1.5 million, there'll be interest costs on that.
Oh,
portion.
okay, yep.
Yep. And I think we'll try to pay interest back to the city too for that 500,000 as well. Okay, next slide, Christie. Yeah, the steps that we've completed so far leading up to the council meeting this evening is we had the initial meeting of the Joint Review Board, which is made up of members of all the taxing jurisdictions. They have an active role in the creation of a new district. And then that was on the 3rd of April. Then on the 4th, we held a public hearing of the Community Development Authority, and they approved a resolution recommending approval of this new district to the City Council. Tonight is the next step in the process, which would be a review and hopeful approval by the City Council of proposed District Number 12. And if the council takes that action this evening, we have scheduled for Wednesday morning what we call the final Joint Review Board meeting, where there'll be a vote of the Joint Review Board at that meeting. Just to inform the council, and certainly Noah and Rayanne and Nick, the Joint Review Board, I think, was very positive. They gave us a couple ideas or thoughts that they have, but overall very positive of what the city is doing here, and I wouldn't expect any surprises there from them. So with that, I know we've had a couple questions, but Mayor, if there's any other questions from yourself or the council, be happy to discuss those.
Answer my questions. Let's have a motion first, and then we can go to questions.
Approve the tax instrument, or tax district number 12.
And I'll second the motion to create that tax.
Okay,
Increment
any
district.
further discussion? No. Not?
So of the pedestrian and sidewalk improvements, do we want to get into that yet, or not really? I mean, what area are we talking about that we could use that $500,000 of improvements?
So that would be part of the, like the site plan, or again, within that radius that we
That
showed on the.
half-mile
Yep,
radius.
within that area. So,
How specific do we have to be on that? I mean, is it just on that
as
property?
part of the plan, we don't have to say the sidewalk's gonna be located here, or this is where a pedestrian crossing is gonna be. It's an eligible expenditure. You can't use that for like the build out of like library furniture or something like that.
Yeah,
It has to
no.
be more infrastructure related. So it is an eligible expense, but for purposes of the plan, we don't have to actually document which sidewalks would get replaced or added.
Any other questions? Not, Michelle, take the roll, please.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is bids for Public Works truck.
So included in the 2024 capital improvement plan was replacement of a pickup truck for the Public Works Department. Included in the memo in your packet and up on the screen were the various bids that were received. And staff will be recommending proceeding with the bid from Bernard's, which was also the low bid. And that was in the amount of, if I can test my eyes here.
Or 168.50.
Thank you. And you can see the estimated delivery is in 12 to 18 weeks. That would be for a 2024 Ram 2500 with a regular cab. That includes a 3-year, 36,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty and 5-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. And we would also look for allocation of a not-to-exceed amount of $2,500 for light bar, storage box, any vinyl graphic work needed. That was really there was some discussion about a regular cab versus extended cab. And when you look at the cost difference between the two, we really have a difficult time trying to justify spending several $1,000s more just for a larger cab when you could just have a toolbox on the back. So that's what that additional amount would be designated for. You can see quite a few bids, both local dealerships and then some you can see actually in the Twin Cities area. I think costs ranging up to $60,000 on the high end, so.
I move to accept the low bid of $44,168.50, allocating not to exceed $2,500 for the light bar, storage box, and vinyl graphics.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
and I have Alderman Montello abstaining.
Motion passes. Bids for ash tree removal.
So also included, oh, sure, you can go. Also included in this year's capital plan was some of the contracted tree removal for ash trees in the city of New Richmond. And you can see included in the packet, we received bids for the removal of 49 ash trees within the public right-of-way. So these are your boulevard trees, not private property, not in city parks, just the boulevards. These would be for ash trees that are 16 inches or larger in diameter, or trees that are involving overhead power lines that we would not be as comfortable with our staff removing. And we received 8 bids ranging from $25,500 up to $55,250. So quite a range. And we would recommend staff approving the bid from BJ Haynes in the amount of $25,500 for the removal of ash trees.
Hear a motion to approve B.J. Haynes for $25,500.
I'll offer that motion.
Second, Mike?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay,
I just have a question.
I do too.
If I can. How come we don't list these in the order of the bids?
I think this was just the order when they did the opening that they were opened in. But yeah, certainly if you'd prefer that they're ranked or just from, least expensive to most expensive.
I
we
just
can
think
do
it
that.
makes it more clear.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
no, I appreciate that.
I got a question too. Does this include stump removal too?
Well, that was my question.
I don't recall if that was included in the bid package
we
or
should know
if that's
that.
something we were doing.
I saw them when I was walking through the park earlier this week. Our crews have their own stump removal equipment now doing
We do.
it.
Yeah,
Oh,
we do
so
have our
we'll
own
take
stump
it out
grinder,
ourselves then?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Because
recall for this if that was included in their scope of work or if that's something we were doing, but we
Oh,
do
okay.
have the ability to do that in-house.
Okay, that's great.
I believe that was part of the bid. Not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'd have to look back at the
Bid let them do
specs,
it.
but
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's correct, very time consuming.
No,
That many trees.
I'd like these listed alphabetical order instead of financial.
we can do both.
Tim, you're the middleman here. Take care of that.
Yeah, I think this was the order that when we did the opening itself, if sometimes you get contractors that are here writing down the bids, this would have been the order that they
You just
opened
want to
them
put them in a hat and shake it and pull them out? Any other questions? If not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Motion passes. SCADA radio replacements.
This item was discussed at the Utility Commission meeting recently. This is being brought to the council really just because of the size and scope of, and the cost in this case of the project. Included in the packet, there's a short memo and there's also a map just showing the various wells, water towers, lift stations, booster stations. And as part of the operating budget for water and sewer, we'd be looking to replace half of the radios this year. Estimated cost is $50,000. So Utility Commission was supportive of moving forward with this. Again, the kind of a phased approach just because of the cost of this. And then would look to likely address the other half in 2025.
Mr. Mayor, I offer a motion that we approve the replacement of half the SCADA radios this year with an estimated cost of $50,000.
Second,
Any further questions or discussion?
just in our discussion at the Utilities Committee, there were other options that may have been less expensive. Process to
Else?
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, flock camera system.
I'll introduce this and then I'll and let Chief Ely take it from there. Some members of the council are on the Public Safety Committee, so you're have some background in this, and Chief Ely can talk more about flock safety and the potential benefit for this for the community. In terms of just some very brief background, we've had a memorandum of understanding with flock safety since 2022, which has allowed us at no cost to have access to cameras in other communities across other jurisdictions. That is going away now as of this year, where you aren't going to have access to other cameras unless you have your own cameras yourselves. That's a minimum of 4. This was not an item that we had included as part of this year's operating budget. However, there are funds from the 2017 hail damage that would essentially offset the cost for 4 cameras through the end of, for 1 year, essentially. Now, as part, and Chief Ely can speak more to this, we do not own the cameras. You're essentially having a contract, and so this isn't a one-time acquisition cost where now we have 4 cameras. There's an ongoing fee, and so just to keep in mind that we're just early stages of talking about 2025 budget. So I know the Public Safety Committee talked about, well, what would it look like if we went from 4 cameras and actually had more cameras and kind of phased these in incrementally. We talked upwards of, I think, 16 cameras even. But tonight we would really just be looking for a direction to get the minimum of 4. And then certainly as we look at the 2025 budget, see if there's an interest in looking to increase this. This would be for 2 years. So the hail damage proceeds really get you through that first year, but then you really would be committing to an increase in 2025 of $12,000 just for the 4 cameras. So I'll let Chief Ely kind of talk more about just kind of flock safety, kind of the benefits he sees this for our detectives, and all your questions can probably go to him.
What does it really do? I mean, I don't know.
So flock safety is kind of cutting edge technology. It's been around for many, many years, but they're just trying to really utilize it. It's basically a license plate reader. Okay, and it's either mounted on an existing pole or on a pole in or near the right-of-way along various streets. What many agencies around us do is they set up what's called a geofence around their jurisdiction. And for us to do that, we would need approximately 16 cameras. Again, that's down the road. But what it does for us is we don't own the cameras. We don't maintain the record, if you will. So we don't have to deal with open records requests. People can't call up and say, hey, I want to know how many times this car came through your town because I want to know where person X was. We don't have access to that. We can only use it for investigative reasons. But some of the benefits to our community that we've already seen is we were able to track down a person, a vulnerable adult that was in essence abducted from Richmond. We were able to track them all the way down to Florida and have a successful recovery and return of family members here, loved ones, to bring them back through this type of LPR and being able to do that. We've worked with Hudson, who has a lot of cameras, Barron on a number of cases who have a lot of cameras, Barron County, North Hudson, and we've so far to date, up until about a month ago, had access to those cameras to put in what's called like a hot list. If we're looking, we can put in partial plates, vehicle descriptions. If we have a burglary and somebody saw a tan SUV leave the area, we can actually put those parameters into it, this geofence, and see how many tan SUVs and try to develop suspects that way. We can also enter the state actually automatically enters all stolen vehicles, stolen license plates into this system. So let's say we had a camera at Knowles up at 64 and 65 up there at that intersection, and a stolen vehicle came through, it would automatically send to our in-car computers that a stolen vehicle, a stolen license plate, a subject of amber alert, a subject of a silver alert, a green alert, all those are automatically entered into the flock system. And if their license plate hits on a particular camera, our staff would be immediately notified. So there's obviously some great benefits there. Barron County, or the city of Barron, actually, if you remember, they had a home abduction that they had no suspects, an elderly gentleman, his car, or a whole bunch of guns and a bunch of money were stolen. It was a home invasion. One of the neighbors was coming home from his job late at night and said, hey, we saw this, I saw this vehicle leaving the area. They were actually able to track that vehicle all the way back to Minnesota, develop suspects very quickly without having any type of information. They 100% say that they wouldn't have solved that crime if it weren't for flock type cameras.
Were flock
So-
cameras used in the murder arson case a couple of years ago?
Here in Richmond?
Well, when you tracked this person down to Texas,
Nope, we didn't have,
didn't Hudson have?
they
Cameras?
did, but we didn't, we knew what car we were looking for, but actually an LPR was the one that picked it up at the airport down in Iowa. But that was a vehicle-mounted license plate reader. So on that one, no, flock wasn't used on that. That was before Hudson had theirs. But,
There is no live monitoring.
no,
I'm familiar with, in England, what they refer to as CCTV, which is really just a closed-circuit TV system that they do what I would call active surveillance on anybody who walks in front of the camera. But this is very similar to if you haven't paid a toll on the tollway. This is basically, I think, a form of the system that they use that generates that nice photograph of your license plate.
Right.
And they track you down.
it does not capture the driver or passengers. It is not a red light camera. It's not there for enforcement purposes for people that are speeding or running red lights or any of those sorts of things. However, if we have a hit and run crash, then we can put those parameters in. And let's say the person that got hit gives us a description of a vehicle, then we can pull those, put in the parameters that they give us and get feedback. You can add stuff like if it's a pickup truck with a topper, you can specify that. An SUV with bumper stickers, you can specify different search parameters. We have to draw a case number to do it. So we won't have officers just accessing flock just 'cause, or anything like that. It's very specific parameters to gain access to that information.
When you were talking about this intersection on the north side of town, 64, 65, is it one camera gets all four roads, or is it only one direction? How does that work?
It's one direction. So if you put one out on County Road A, let's say, a 2-lane highway, depending on which side of the road it's on, you're gonna get about 95% of the vehicles going the direction the camera is facing on the close side of the road. And it drops down to about 65 to 70% on the other side of the road. So to do a major intersection like Richmond Way or 64 and 65, it's gonna take a number of cameras to cover that. They have some different types of cameras that, like, if we put one in at down at Richmond Way and Knowles, that you could actually zoom in and, we have a number of shoplifters and things like that that come through. You can actually zoom in over to the front of Walmart and capture plates with that specific type of camera. That's not the kind of camera that captures the license plates that we're looking at. And that's why it's upwards of 16 cameras to get the complete geofence, down the road. And there's some potentially some opportunity to go with a little bit less than that down the road, but what we're looking for is
A more robust system.
a more robust system to give this a try, and more importantly, right now, to keep our access to flock.
And that's really the
Because
key.
we have seen benefits from it.
It isn't just a, if I can say, a crime-fighting tool for the city of New Richmond. It's certainly important that because you will have no access to flock in these neighboring communities if you don't have a flock system yourself.
Correct. We've had that for the last few years under this MOU, but Flock has found that it's not cost-effective for them to continue to give everybody free access to the cameras.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve this foray into the flock system. 4 cameras they're talking about right now. I understand it's $14,600 for the first year and I think $12,000 for the second year, with the concerns budget-wise that have been addressed in the memo, that we deal with that, specifically as the second year comes along. But that's what I'll offer.
I'll second it.
Second it?
The only question I have is, you talked about on your squads, you have license plate readers?
We do not. We don't have
Hudson
license
does.
plate readers here. Other agencies do. You know, airports, Hudson has some on some of their vehicles. The county has some on their vehicles.
This the same system?
Similar,
If-
I
but
don't
it's a
know
different
what
program.
system they use for those, if Flock makes a vehicle-mounted LPR. But, you know, communities that have especially parking type enforcement, you know, metered parking and stuff like that, the Flock safety can, or those LPRs can really help out with that type of enforcement. Since we don't really have that per se. You know, but I know the sheriff's department has a couple cars now that are set up with LPRs that are out driving around, and they've had success with that, with stolen vehicles and people with warrants and stuff like that, but.
I can say we spoke 2 months in a row at this, at the public safety. And we spent a considerable amount of time, and personally, I'm just so impressed with this. And Chief went through many, many other instances of where this, he just went through a couple tonight, but where this works in that communication with people around, it is an amazing system, I think. So.
It gives you guys a nice extra tool.
So are you going to document how many times this worked, or, you know, it helped in an arrest or whatever? Because like Mike said, this is the first year. We're going to see if it's useful, and then we'll look at the second year. So you're going to document every time it really helps you out?
Yeah, it'll be documented in every case that we actually use it. We have to document that we have used it.
Let me just offer something, Chief, just a point of record here. Mayor, we're approving it for 2 years because that's
Right.
what flock requires.
Yep.
Just so you know.
That's fine, okay,
Yeah.
after the 2 years then, just so we know what, you know, how this is working out.
So do we have any estimates, what the third year would be? You're basically leasing out their equipment to use.
Yeah, so the cost breakdown is for them to come out and mount the camera, worst case scenario, $650 per camera.
Okay,
If we can utilize our own pole, so a street light,
which we could.
it drops that fee down to $150. So what I
Okay.
put out is the worst case scenario if we have to have them install their own poles, depending on, and we'll work with Flock, which we've already done to kind of
For
set up that
positioning.
geofence, to try to figure out where we're gonna get the most bang, if you will, where the cameras will be most utilized and beneficial for us. I mean, with 4 cameras, that's a pretty limited scope.
Yeah,
It's kind of a, but the first thing is the 4 cameras is what keeps us involved with Flock,
and
which
that's
is a
the big
benefit.
point right now.
Yes. I can give you a number of examples how we've used that already in kind of response to you, Mayor, with the way our staff has worked with Hudson PD, North Hudson PD, Barron and Rice Lake and some other areas to develop, you know, people travel. But finding that there's a lot of value in that, it makes our detectives a lot more efficient. And then I think it just makes the public safer, especially when it comes to amber alerts, green alerts, silver alerts, and stuff like that, where we have people that we know have been through New Richmond that we just didn't catch, you know, or weren't able to assist, if you will. that are, you know, suffering from dementia and get lost. And finally, when they are finally found, they're like, oh, well, they came through New Richmond and we didn't have any knowledge of it.
My question is though, year 3, we get these 2 years in, we love the 4, we might get 4 more, whatever it is.
Yep.
Is it a
it's-
per unit, per year
Yes.
cost?
Yes, so the installation of each unit, $650, that's a one-time cost.
Yep.
And then each camera is $2,600 a year to basically rent it. And
Yeah.
that includes them storing the data and all that stuff. The only time we have to store the data and we're responsible for it is if we actually use the data. And then it would be
Ask for the
attached to a
data.
case.
Yep.
And that, you know, it's basically a still shot of the license plate.
Okay.
So it's not like it's a ton of data that we have to store. They take care of all that. So, you know, obviously, we're hoping that at some point we'll be able to expand the program. You know, but again, I understand, it's expensive.
Well, but it's a great
And-
start. I mean, we
and
got to get,
It is a good
we
start.
got to
and
get the
that'll-
other cameras is, I think right now, just as important as our own 4, is to get access to a lot of the other communities.
Right.
I just wanted to offer, you know, Chief, you said 2,600 a camera per year. I just, the way I was reading through this contract, it looks to me like it's $12,000 is an annual, it's the recurring.
Plus the 26 per camera?
No,
No,
that's what it
that's what it'd
is.
be.
I think it's 12,000. Chief was describing it as 26,000. Just the way I'm reading this, it looks like $12,000 is the recurring fee.
For
For
four-
4 cameras.
For
That
4
is
cameras.
correct.
So
Yep.
it would be 26, 24,
Whatever-
for 8
Yeah,
cameras.
whatever-
if we go up to 8 cameras, it would be, again, to add those 4 new cameras, $650 per camera, and then another $12,000. So if we went up to 8 cameras in year 2, then it would be 24,000 reoccurring,
Per year.
yes.
And we don't own those cameras. That's fully
Right.
taking care of those cameras. We don't ever have to, that's,
Nope, they
They're-
take
they're
care of the
guaranteed to
maintenance
keep-
on them.
yep.
The only thing that
Yep.
we would be responsible for is if they were on a light pole that got hit in a car crash,
Yep.
and they had to come out and replace the camera, it's $150.
How far up on the post are these cameras?
They're about 15 feet off the ground. I actually met with a representative from the state that kind of oversees all the flock cameras in the state of Wisconsin. And there are some areas that it's tough, like the interstate. It takes some pretty substantial paperwork and permitting to get them out in certain areas. And then in the right-of-way of state highways. But flock actually takes care of all the permitting through the state. So everything that we would put up would be permitted through flock and the state. We can use an existing post, we're gonna do that. If they come out and they put a post in for us, it's just a small black post, and the camera's about this big, I think it weighs 3 pounds. And then those can be solar powered, or if there's existing electricity at that pole, they can utilize that as well. But it doesn't cost anything extra for the solar panel or any of that stuff. So this is kind of worst case scenario for year 1. We're hoping we can actually get the cost down a little bit more, saving us on the installation.
Not, take the roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes?
Alderman Gartner,
yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, 2024 first quarter financial report. Rayanne?
Mayor and council. So we have just a few slides prepared for you this evening. I might not follow them exactly, as I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the revenues and expenditures. Typically, first quarter, there's not as much activity to report on. Things are pretty on track with where we are at budget and with prior years. So I'm just going to highlight some of those activities that occur in first quarter, and then happy to answer any questions that the council may have. So in regards to revenues, total revenues through the first quarter were just under $4 million at $3,976,830. which accounts for 44.7% of our budgeted revenues. Property taxes serve as the largest component of our revenue, with collections being at 56% of budget. That trends pretty close to where we were in prior years, slightly down by 2%. Typically, we see around a 58% on average collection of property taxes in that first quarter. Again, the second half of property taxes are due July 31st, with our settlement occurring in August, so that's when we will see the final collection of those property taxes becoming whole for the city. County funding for the library was also received in whole in first quarter, which totaled just under $400,000. Building permit revenue, which is the large share of our regulation and compliance revenue, that was an increase from prior year, up by 30.8% or $9,000, while the number of permits were comparable to prior year. The total construction value was slightly higher compared to prior year as well. So total construction value was approximately higher by $1.3 million. The favorable market conditions for investments continue in first quarter, with earnings being of $126,000 on our investments through first quarter. And as the continuation of our fiber optic being laid within the community, our street excavation fees, which are those right-of-way fees, remain strong with fees at $21,000 for the first quarter.
Fran, do you want me to wait if I have a question about something you just talked about until you're done?
No, go ahead.
The investment income, is it because of the rate of return or is it because we have more money invested?
The rate of return. Good question. Tax increment district number 6, which was terminated in 2023. We did receive that final increment from those taxes that are collected from 23's assessment that are collected in 2024. So that tax increment district right now is going through its final audit, which then we turn that audit and the final accounting into the state in early June. But based upon our final closure, which is still subject to that audit, the TID had a fund balance remaining of $358,501. The city's share of that is $113,500, and so that's reflected as a transfer in underneath the general fund from the TID 6. Also, that final year of increment that we collected was also through resolution of the council's action, goes to the Affordable Housing Fund. So that amount was $613,491 that went to Fund 271.
What's currently in there? About,
$1,560,283. So just under $1.6 million. And those would be the revenues from the closure of TID 5, 8, and now 6. Any other questions on revenues before I move expenditures?
portion of taxes that weren't collected in 2024 or 23? What, do we have an outstanding taxes?
Don't have the delinquency rate of those yet because the second half is not due until July 31st.
Oh, sure.
Yep. For expenditures, total expenditures were $2,145,273. This represents 24.1% of budget, which was slightly below when we look at 2023 expenditures, $2.146 million. Again, expenses aren't equally incurred throughout the year, and so there are some expenses in the first quarter of the year that create some small variances to the budget, but then as we continue to move through the year, those variances will smooth out and land favorably. Some examples of those are our assessing contracts, our auditing services, cataloging services through IFLS at the library, as well as some property and liability insurance that is incurred as well. But overall, typically we would look at each quarter as we would move through. If our expenditures are on track with 25% of budget, we are on pace to continue to remain on target for the end of the year and remaining with a neutral budget. The other aspects I just wanted to highlight for expenses in first quarter, you know, due to the mild winter in first quarter, we certainly had a lower than budgeted spend in public works, specifically in snow and ice removal. And so that certainly helped our favorable position overall for expenses in this first quarter. And then overall, can you go to the debt slide as well? Next one, Christy, thank you. So as of first quarter, again, our debt payments in first quarter, there's some that occur, but the bulk of our debt payments really occur in second and then in fourth quarter. So total principal and interest payments were made of $506,013. At 12/31 of 2023, our total debt outstanding was just over $17 million. I do want to kind of highlight, though, with the issuance of the electric debt that falls underneath GO, that represents $4.5 million of debt outstanding is attributable to the electric utility. So, you know, excluding that, the portion that is of the cities is less than $4.5 million. So for first quarter, very favorable results. Some good highlights in regards to still a strong investment earnings aspect from a revenue perspective. The finalization of Tax Increment District 6 and the closure of that brings in some additional funding to the general fund as well. And expenses are trending nicely to budget.
Questions? No, thank you. Next item, May work session.
Yeah, so our May work session date falls on Memorial Day, so typically it'd be the fourth Monday of the month. And we just thought, while we had the whole group here tonight, if you wanted to look at alternative date, it could be the week before, it could be a couple days later later that same week. I'm not sure if anyone has travel plans or anything here in late May, but we just thought while the group was here, if you wanted to, or at least share any dates we should avoid if you know you're out of town or you have something going on. We can certainly follow up via email if that's easier, just for the sake of time. I know it's getting later here tonight, but we just thought we'd put it out there if folks had certain dates that would work well or that we should avoid.
A question.
Next week, I am really tied up. I have multiple meetings with the school. Graduation next week, so I'm pretty much out for next week. The 28th would be fine for me.
My question is, doesn't it make sense for us to go later in the month to have a little spread between tonight and when we have that meeting? Or would you say we could have the work session tomorrow? I know that's not the plan because the agenda's already, it's ready to go. Or do we want to put some time between tonight and that meeting?
I think having a little bit of buffer would be fine. Certainly if there's folks that are out the whole week of Memorial Day, or if you're traveling for graduations or something, but you know, certainly having it the week of Memorial Day it would be just fine. It gives us a little more time to send you out materials ahead of time for the meeting.
Just
too.
maybe to spur conversation, then I guess if it's not an issue with anybody, I would ask for consideration for the 28th. That's the Tuesday.
About the 28th and 29th.
Okay. 30th? Thursday nights, that work for everybody?
Good June 1st, but
Well, that falls into next month.
I'm fine. I'm fine on the 30th.
June is dairy month, man.
Any preference on starting time? We've been doing our work sessions at 6, but just want to put that out there too.
On what date?
The 30th, that
Thursday,
Thursday.
the 30th at 6. If in the coming days, if you realize you've got a conflict or something, just let us know, but that's what we'll plan to go with.
Did anybody want earlier than 6 at 5 or 5:30?
Well, I can appreciate how that might be okay for folks. I just think it's super important that we try to make them public access as great as possible. So I think if we can start at 6, that's a good compromise.
Well, and then consistently having them, they've always been at 6. So.
Yep.
Can we do it like on the 23rd if people are wearing, or is that everybody tied up on the
I
23rd?
definitely can't.
You're tied up then. Not with me. Anybody else?
Sold. 30th at 6.
30 at 6. Sold. Any communication or miscellaneous?
I actually have a couple things. I just, somebody asked me the question about fluoride in water. And I know that's something that there are communities absolutely that don't put fluoride in their water anymore, and I'm not here suggesting. I just think that it would be interesting if, I don't know if that's a council thing or if that's a utility.
It'll actually be on either our June or July utility commission agenda. It's actually very good
Okay,
timing.
well,
Yep.
I appreciate that. And then the chief handed out to everybody the police report before we started here tonight. And I will tell you that the 2023 overview, the statistics, there's some really fascinating information in here. And I think it speaks to the work that law enforcement does in our community. Drug investigation statistics in there. It's kind of hard for some of us to even imagine that that stuff is in our community, but it's right there. So I appreciate that, Chief. And kind of on that, I just want to remind everybody, this is Law Enforcement Week. St. Croix County has a contingency of, I understand, roughly 50 people that traveled out to Washington, D.C. Sheriff's Deputy Katie Lysing's name is being put on the police memorial wall. And so a contingent of people from this law enforcement in this area have traveled out there to be part of that. So I just, it's one of those things. She paid the ultimate sacrifice, and we appreciate the work of law enforcement. But again, I asked the chief before we started, their flag's at half, that's why it's at half-mast, just in honor of Law Enforcement Week. So we appreciate all that you do and all the folks in your department. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And yeah, that was on my list of reminders as well. And we're also thinking, about Hunter Shield and Emily Bradenbach from, up in Barron County as well. Cameron and Chautauqua PDs. There's still a lot of hurting law enforcement in this area. And these anniversaries, in April, kind of regenerate a lot of those emotions for people. So we're working through some of those. Tremendous community support is always appreciated and felt in the city in Richmond, and we appreciate that. If I may, we do have the K-9 fundraising walk coming up May 18th, next Saturday. Registration's at 9. Starts at 10.
How far is it?
It basically runs from the police department through the industrial park, down the bike trail over to 6th Street and back.
Okay.
I don't think it's quite 2 miles. Pretty good contingency of folks out there with their pets. We've also got a K-9 graduation coming up, and I apologize I didn't bring the exact date and time, but I'll be sending something out to the council if there's any council members, public safety committee members, police and fire commission members that want to attend the K-9 graduation. I know a few of you have done that in the past. It's entertaining. It's really neat to see dogs and handlers work together, and the amazing things that these handlers and dogs have learned how to do past few months. We're really excited for Officer Benke to get back here with CODA. There will also be some t-shirt sales going out as a fundraiser as well to continue supporting that program. But more to come on that.
Is CODA a Malinois?
Well, it's actually a black Dutch.
Size-wise, bigger than Storm?
Taller, but a little lankier. We're hoping. See how graduation goes.
Yeah, I would encourage people, I went to Storm's graduation, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Going to the
pretty-
graduation is pretty impressive.
Parking is really limited over there.
Got a ride share.
So if you can ride share with folks, that would be fantastic. And then I also just wanted to point out that Officer Katie Shivery, she was the previous dog handler. Mackenzie Hazen Just got back from a really cool training on community engagement. Excited about the ideas she's bringing back to increase our community engagement. Want out some new programs to infuse our officers within the city of Richmond to really foster that relationship with our public. It's gonna be really neat.
Any other communication?
Yes, this week is open book. So everybody received their change of assessment notice. The appraisers will be in town, the assessors will be in town on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. If you haven't received your assessment notice, certainly reach out to the clerk's office. Otherwise, there's very clear instructions on the back side of the form on how to set up an appointment so that you're not sitting around waiting for those appointments. If you just simply have questions, you can also reach out to Christy and I in the clerk's office. And then there is a survey that is going out to utility customers. So if you receive that in the mail or email, it's not spam. It's coming from, might look like it's coming from utilities or WPPI. They're working with a third party called Sunseed. So really good feedback, and that will only improve the services. So please take a look at those.
Have a date for, been determined yet?
It's the end of June, June 27th. Stay tuned.
Got a
But
question.
the answer is yes. I'll put that in the communications in the minutes.
I have a question. What was the average assessment increase?
So that isn't determined until you get through open book, and it varies between commercial and homes. Homes right now, we're kind of just right near 5%, like 4.8%. But of course, until we go through that open book process and property owners have a chance to get feedback and make sure that they're at the right spot, everything is very tentative. So we'll have that after board of review for sure.
If not, do we hear a motion to go into closed session?
We'll move to closed session.
I'll second it.
Take the roll, please.
Alderman Gartner,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Breeze,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
We're in closed session. Does anybody want to take a quick break or not?
This
This will be
conference
pretty
is
quick.
no longer being recorded.
I think we keep going.
Isn't it? Updates on both